Creative power is what moves the world, and Creative Conversations with Irene is a podcast series that offers insight and inspiration on how to thrive in the core essence of who you are as a woman. I'm your host, Irene Chong, and it thrills my heart to see more women awaken and come alive to your feminine intelligence. Listen in for soul and strategy to create your best life ever. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us on social media to receive updates on new episodes. Heather, when we first met on the summit that I was hosting, you instantly came across as someone who has a lot of integrity. And you carry the energy of an elder that I would love to embody when I reach that stage of my life. Personally, I would love to see more female elders who are living vibrant, creative, purposeful lives. And so today, I think we're going to have an interesting conversation on what creativity means to you and how you practice it in your everyday life. So I know that in the work that you do, you have often proposed, right, that the cosmic energies in the times that we're living in, that it's guiding us into reconnecting with the wisdom of the sacred feminine. And I love that because you've also proposed that this is really a move into the new paradigms of the Aquarian age. So this is the big picture of what's happening in the collective. And what I'd really like to do in this session with you is to sort of zoom in, narrow down into the individual level, where we're each learning how to come back into right relationship with planet Earth, with one another in our relationships, etc. And I took my inspiration from something that you had shared in an earlier video of yours when you were speaking about the importance of right brain thinking. And you had said something along the lines of how advanced cultures in ancient times, these cultures possessed a complex and sophisticated understanding of technology, and that they were right brain dominant. So I'd love if you could share what you mean by that and say a little bit more. Give us your thoughts on what right brain thinking means to you.
Oh, beautiful, Irene. And thank you for being in this conversation with me and for this topic. I think it's a very, very important topic in this time, because I do think we are being called to come back into balance, come back into right relationship. And I think for us as women, it is important to remember that wisdom of the sacred feminine, and that is more right-brained in nature, which means being more right-brained is about honoring our intuition, our capacity to see things in their wholeness instead of breaking things down into their parts. Right-brain thinking is more integrative. It's more holistic. And it is about being more relational and empathic. So when we're caught in the left brain and we're in a culture, our modern culture is more left brain dominant, and that is about analytical thinking. And there's a gift to that also, but it's much more about linear, detail-oriented thinking and analyzing something as being separate from it. Whereas the right brain way of knowing is that remembrance that everything is interconnected. So we're really meant to bring that more back into balance. And I think that is a part of the paradigm shift that we're in right now. And being more right brain is also tapping into our creativity and honoring that. So I do think that's important for us as humans, but particularly for us as women, to really activate that and honor that aspect of ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting that. I especially love the piece where you mentioned that it's not to say that the left brain, rational, analytical thinking is bad, but there has been an imbalance. And so the way to redress this imbalance is to really focus our attention and our energy on more right brain ways of thinking. Now, there was one phrase that you used, and on a personal note, like I'm personally interested in it because I came to learn about this phrase through you, and that is integrative thinking. I have come to love this phrase because it's not just to say that, oh, we want to be right versus left. It's about integrating. And I feel that the sacred feminine that inclusivity, that cohesiveness and wholeness and coming into full integrity is very much an integrative way of looking at the world. So can you share how that sort of speaks to your focus on bringing the sacred feminine back?
These are great questions. Let me just say something first about right brain versus left brain ways of being. There's a great book by Ian McGilchrist called The Master and His Emissary. Not a great title, but the meaning of the book is that we're actually more in balance, more in harmony when we let the right brain lead the way and the left brain be the part of us that then implements the right brain, intuition, creativity, integrative understanding. So that would be a real shift from how our modern culture is currently functioning. And I think that really honoring as women that remembrance of the sacred feminine, that remembrance, prior to this modern patriarchal period, we were from 4000 to 2000 BCE in the age of Taurus, when we were more right brain dominant, when the sacred feminine was really honored. And that was a time of peace. The settlements in that period of time did not have walls and protection. There wasn't this widespread sense of war and conquering and conquest. It was about creativity. It was about art. It was about community, collaboration, co-creation. And if we can remember that, and we as women carry that remembrance of the age of Taurus, of that ancient sacred wisdom, if we can bring that back and really begin to live that, then we're helping co-create a new world together.
To begin to live that, yes. Oh, Heather, as you were sharing, I was very moved. I do have a remembrance of those times, that beautiful time when there was peace and there was a flourishing of creativity. Because when you don't have war and don't have violence, you get to create. And I love how you spoke into that. Let me come back to something that I also wanted to ask you on a more personal note, because early on you were talking about how the feminine that relates to our intuition, the right brain ways of thinking. And we were also talking pre-recording about the sensitivity that a lot of women have. And I've always related sensitivity to intuition as well, because to be intuitive, to be empathic, you've got to be able to sense, to be sensitive to what is going on around. And I was actually a bit surprised to hear that, oh, there was a time in your life when you had experienced anxiety. Because I look at you now and you are so calm and balanced and grounded and centered. And as I mentioned at the beginning, when I hit my elder years, I would like to have that. Now I still struggle with the anxiety, which I've begun to see as an incredible sensitivity. So I'd love to hear from you. And I think the women who are hearing this, who are also struggling with being sensitive in a world that can seem very insensitive. How did you find your way and step into a place to step up and speak out, to speak your truth, and to no longer let that anxiety overpower or drive your behavior and actions?
That's a great question. And, we could talk about that for a long time, but let me just kind of give you a brief sense of my own journey with that. I do think, as you're saying, that those of us who are sensitive do often feel that anxiety. And I think it's, and being more right brain dominant is also associated with being more empathic. And I think those of us who are sensitive are not only more attuned to the energies and emotions of others around us, but to what's going on in the collective. So I think we need to honor that some of the anxiety that we feel when we're sensitive is our own, and some of it is our sensitivity to that anxiety that's very prominent in the collective right now. For me, my own personal anxiety, through my own deep process with it, I realized how it was very tied for me to my own past life trauma of speaking out, being in that honoring of the sacred feminine wisdom, and being targeted and persecuted for that within the patriarchal period. So I've come into this lifetime really knowing that part of my mission here is to bring that sacred feminine wisdom forward, but then I'm hitting up against not only the ways that that's hitting up against tension in the current culture, but also my own past life trauma. So I literally would be close to overwhelming anxiety that would be disabling to me anytime I was really trying to speak out and speak my truth. And I think many of us women struggle with that. And I worked that in therapy. I worked that in, different ways. I tried to manage that. Very few people knew that that was an issue for me because I could manage it. But what really shifted it for me was my connecting with a plant ally. So I was doing herbal training, and we were told to go out, connect to a plant that we were drawn to, meditate with that plant, and see what its medicine was for us. And again, that's right brain, intuitive, empathic attunement. So I went out in the garden and I was really drawn to red bee balm. Have you ever seen that plant? Beautiful plant. It just bursts with its bright red color. And it draws the butterflies, it draws the hummingbirds, the bees. So I'm sitting with this plant and I'm just asking for its medicine. And what it basically, the plant communicated to me through our, communion with each other was, Heather, you're afraid of your own inner fire. But look at how I let my fire, my red energy, be visible in the world. And it's of service to the bees, to the hummingbirds, to the pollinators. As you trust yourself and let that energy out, then you're supporting others in healing and transforming. So I made a flower essence with bee balm. And from that day forward, anytime I had to do public speaking or I was faced with one of those situations where I was terrified to speak my truth and let my own creativity out, I would take that flower essence and honor red bee balm, and my fear would disappear because it became this awareness that, oh, I need to allow this creative energy and light and energy of this truth that can come through me be of service to others. And it really dramatically shifted that anxiety for me. And again, I think part of connecting to the sacred feminine wisdom is remembering the wisdom of the earth, of the plants, of the animals, of the earth herself, wanting us to heal, wanting us to remember who we are, wanting us to come into wholeness, wanting us to express our own unique creativity.
Wow, beautiful. That was such a powerful share, Heather. That story of coming into right relationship. We were taking inspiration, and I always see the feminine as relational. So that communion with a plant ally, and then having that reminder almost of your own spiritual essence. So yeah, that is absolutely beautiful. I know for me, so I haven't actually done serious communing with plants. I've done some of that. But what I do, and what I used to do, is I used to take the bark rescue remedy. And I also had a friend who used to prepare tinctures for me. And I found that really helped with my anxiety. So I totally resonate with, reaching for our earth friends. There was also
Yes.
it also reminded me that one of the other things that I did was that I connected with my power animal. And again, that
Mm.
was done through a shamanic journey, which I know you have experience in. So it's almost like, yeah, when the anxiety creeps up or when we are struggling with our sensitivity, let's not forget that we have many allies in the plant, animal, and the spirit world. And on that note, I know that a lot of what you share in your videos and your work is about how the cosmic energies are actually in support of us opening up to our sacred feminine. I also know that you have a video that you've made for the energies of 2024, and I'll put the link in this right below this episode. But can you say a little bit more, especially in relation to the sacred feminine? How are the energies right now supporting us as women to co-create, to consciously co-create the beautiful life, that our hearts know is possible?
So there's so many energies that we've been in this latter half of 2023 that are leading us into 2024. And I really believe 2024 is going to be an accelerated time of change for all of us. But a couple of things I'd love to point out. One is I think we as women need to really embrace the wisdom of Eris Xena,
Mm.
that dwarf planet that from July of 2023 through January of 2024 has been conjunct the North Node. So very much activating her energy and for us to connect with her. And we can continue to work with her throughout 2024. Her energy is so powerful and I think important for us as women. And I always call her Eris Xena because she was originally named after Xena, the warrior princess, and then renamed Eris after the Greek goddess of strife and discord because she stirred up so much controversy by her nature and her unusual orbit. So she's such an example of what it means for us as women to dare to step out in our own truth and our own creativity in a way that isn't accommodating the cultural expectations for us as women.
Mm.
What's so profound about that planet is most of the planets in our solar system follow the same path in the sky. She's 44 degrees off. And modeled after Xena, the warrior princess, who chose to step out of the old paradigms, follow her own spiritual creative path, daring to be different, to not have to fit into consensual reality, be the way everybody else thought she should be. She follows her own unique creative path. And she's very powerful in the charts of pioneers, artists, innovators, creators. But I think she teaches us that we need to dare to be different, to remember that sacred feminine wisdom and creativity and follow our own path, even though we may be misunderstood, even though we may get these projections onto us that this planet got because she doesn't fit the normative way of being.
Mm.
But I think she's really guiding us as women to step into our remembrance of who we are and that inner wisdom and intuition and creativity and follow our own unique path.
Mm. I'm really enjoying how this flow of the conversation is taking us. And I have two things that I want to say to this, which is number one, I really enjoyed reading the article you wrote about Eris Xena, because if I may say so, that was a very right brain way of looking at this dwarf planet, right? There was the mainstream approach of seeing it as Eris, discord, chaos.
Yeah.
But then you were able to weave in all these myths and stories and also look at the larger context of the astronomer who discovered this dwarf planet and what he had initially named it after. And then that takes on the archetype of the warrioress who does not conform, who stands up and protects what she believes in and has that conviction. And the reason I find this really interesting is because earlier on we were talking about, our struggles with anxiety and, realizing that we are here there's a larger mission, and you wanted to live your mission, to speak your truth. And so you were able to overcome that in a right brain way of communing with a plant ally. And I was sharing with you earlier also that one of the recent revelations I had on my own personal journey was also this incredible sensitivity. And this is where I see, this is the part of me that is sensitive to the discord or the disorderliness that takes place when I stand up and speak my truth, and it could ruffle feathers because it goes against the grain. And my sensitivity can't help but be but feel that, right? Feel the ripples of that. And then again, the feminine, there is a conditioning where you just want to keep the peace, keep the harmony, make sure that everybody is happy. So I know that in my own personal life, and I'm guessing that the women who are listening and watching this may be able to resonate, and possibly, I would love to hear you speak more into this as well. But what came to me was that, yes, I can embrace this incredible sensitivity as part of my divine feminine nature. And I can also acknowledge, affirm, and embrace that there's also an incredible, courageous warrioress energy that is very much linked to this Eris Xena archetype that you're talking about. And that the two can coexist, which would enable someone who is sensitive and feels a lot and is empathic to still be able to speak her truth and stand her ground in the face of, possibly opposition or rejection. Yeah, what are your thoughts about this?
Oh, beautifully said, beautifully said. And for me, Eris Xena can be an ally for us in that. The deeper meaning of Eris Xena and her original name is being a warrioress for peace, for justice, for healing. But it means daring to be different. And you're right, it is that integration of the sensitivity and the courage to dare to be different. And for me, that was a part of what the anxiety was about, growing up my entire life feeling like I don't fit in. I can't accommodate to these cultural expectations and normative ways of being and be true to myself. There was that constant inner conflict. And so over and over again, the challenge was, and I think this is a challenge for many of us women, to dare to be true to our own inner knowing, to dare to be different, to be able to be helping forge these new paradigms that are about coming back into balance and coming back into right relationship. And another ally that's been really important to me in that is Ma'at. That's the ancient Egyptian goddess, but she's actually the ancient Egyptian understanding of that sacred feminine wisdom of being in right balance, right harmony, right relationship with all that is. It's the energy of Libra. And since July, the lunar nodes, which are really the karmic energy of what are we meant to work in this time, shifted into South Node in Libra, North Node in Aries, and that will be true across 2024. They shift in sign in January of 2025. So all of 2024 is how are we integrating that energy of Libra, Ma'at, to move into new forms, new ways of being, North Node in Aries. It's Venus and Mars. Venus is the ruler of Libra, Mars the ruler of Aries. How are we integrating those energies in ourselves? But for us as women, I think we can honor that energy of Ma'at and really allow ourselves to find that courage and strength in honoring that principle of being in right harmony, not accommodating to keep the peace, which is, I think, what many of us sensitive women tend to do. How do we keep the peace? It's really about how do we live in integrity and in our truth and live in that honoring of our right brain knowing what's in right relationship, what's in right harmony, and dare to stand firm in that.
Yes. And we've spoken now about how there's all this support coming from the cosmic sky and from Mother Earth. And I really want to bring up this because it's a question that was bubbling at the beginning of our conversation. And I feel that, I really want to ask this question. So we're thinking about finding allies and support for us so that women can step up in their sensitivity with more courage and conviction. And I know that one of the ways that's been very helpful is to find supportive containers, like a community. And it was quite recent. I think it was a student of yours, Martha Hines, who had a call in which she gathered a group of women who shared their wisdom and insights. And there was this collective gathering, and you had led that call. And one of the things that I remember, it was an anecdote that just made me laugh because I really related to that. There was this woman, and I don't remember her, I don't specifically remember her name or what she said, so I'm paraphrasing. But it was something along the lines of, I have all this important work that I really want to do, but I wasn't able to do it because a household appliance, say a washing machine, my washing machine broke down and I had to go tend to that. And I just laughed because I'm thinking, it's very poetic to think of, wow, the cosmos and Mother Earth supporting us, right, in living beautiful co-creative lives. And then something as simple as maybe the phone breaking down or the dishwasher not working as it should. And so our lives are then sort of, we're thrown off balance. So it's funny that you're speaking of ma'at, right? And I keep thinking about how there has been this polarity, a separation of the mundane and the sacred, but it's really one and the same. And it's about bringing both and integrating both together. So I'm just wondering, as we sort of, wrap our time up together, if you have like a personal story to share or a personal example of how you have learned to navigate the quandary, of the spiritual and the human and integrating them both so that you can live a creative, vibrant, abundant life.
That is a big question. That's and an important question. And yes, I do remember that story in the circle. That was Anne Baring, who is such an amazing, wise elder. And I do think that is a constant tension for us. And one of the things that I think that is really important to remember in terms of that ancient sacred feminine wisdom is that it is about the understanding that everything is sacred. We have a tendency to think the spiritual is what's beyond this mundane reality. And the sacred feminine wisdom, and again, we're not trying to go back into the past, but bring that wisdom forward to help us co-create new paradigms together. And it is about remembering that everything around us is sacred. Everything is conscious. So I actually think, we need to reconnect with the consciousness of plants and animals and the earth and our own bodies. And I even come to honor the consciousness, the energies of the objects around us that are impacted by our energy, our emotions. So I think for me, it is a tension. How do we deal with all these logistics and details of day-to-day life and be on our creative path? But part of what I try to hold just as a kind of awareness is how am I dealing with every detail of my life? I just had a plumbing problem and the pipe broke. How am I relating to that plumber? How am I understanding my house constantly has these leaks? And I think my house has a lot of water energy and it's very sensitive to, emotions that are going on, or, and reflects that. So how am I in relationship with my house around what's getting activated right now? So how can we be in that kind of dance And that kind of energy of being in relationship with everything around us and live our lives from that place of integrity, from that place of how am I in this moment, even in this detail of interacting with this plumber, acting in right relationship,
Yeah.
acting with respect, being in harmony, being in balance rather than, acting out of disconnection or disharmony. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it becomes
Absolutely.
kind of a daily spiritual practice.
Yeah, it's very much like, chop wood, carry waters kind of
Yes.
mentality, isn't it? I'm reminded of, I mean, first of all, right, I'm reminded of the idea of integrity coming into wholeness, where you do see everything as sacred. And I love that reminder to see the everyday living that we're doing as not as we don't see it as unimportant. There's something beautiful and spiritual and sacred in it. And actually, as you were sharing that, I was reminded of an experience that I had. And this was in a place called Findhorn. It's sort of an eco retreat village. It was where I had my first real understanding and experience of communing with plant allies, and spirits from the Davic realms. So I remember one practice that they had was that they name everything. So the bus or the van or, everything had a name.
Yes.
And that act of naming an object means that we're
Bring
forming.
you into relationship.
Yes, exactly. And having that reverence. So I'm just even thinking like one tip, like it's sort of like like if you're watching this and if you're someone who's finding it difficult, right? Having a challenging relationship with certain things in your life, one practice is to just give it a name and learn how to treat it as an ally or a friend and come into a relationship, because everything is interconnected. And I definitely do believe in the sacredness of the ordinary.
Oh, beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And I think another, if I can just add a piece to that, it's also um, carrying that awareness. I think integrative understanding and right brain ways of being are about knowing that everything has meaning. So these aren't just random things that are happening to us. Honor the synchronicity of these experiences and explore what is the meaning for that. I can give you a funny example of that, but I think it really shifts our perspective then to be open to what is going on in this moment and how do I understand it and work with it and the sacredness of it.
Yeah. And I oftentimes find that it's really as simple as just having a different lens or a frame
Yeah,
with which to see things. Like that can just be that one thing we need that can change everything and turn it all around. And I would love to hear
exactly.
that funny story if you'd like to share.
Well, when I was in graduate school, I had very little money, and so I needed a car, and I bought this car from a wholesale lot. So you can imagine it was in bad shape. So I would be driving this car, and it had constant issues. But I was working with really my own deep process as I was also in these early years of graduate school and working with ways that I would feel like I'd get stuck or blocked or constricted. And when I'd be in the midst of working an issue like that, my car would get locked. It wasn't an automatic car, it was a manual transmission. When I'd be in this kind of contracted, in my own inner conflict and block, my car would get stuck in first gear and not go further. And I'd be, trying to get somewhere and it's stuck in this gear. And then I would clear and work through that block and my car would be fine again. And there
Mm.
was another point at which I was struggling with my difficulty in speaking out, speaking my own truth. And my car randomly had some electronic failure such that every time I would turn a corner, it would start honking. And it was as if my car was saying, go ahead, speak out, be real. It was hysterical. But I realized I'm in relationship with this car that did have a name. And it's reflecting back to me what I need to look at in myself, what I need to clear, what I need to work. And again, if we can look at the events in our lives as helping us grow, helping us see what we need to see, so that we're on our own path of stepping more and more into our truth and living from our true selves.
Yeah. I mean, what strikes me immediately is that the universe truly has a sense of humor. That
Yes.
we needn't get too serious sometimes. Because sometimes, you can get caught up, you hear all this about, oh, we're in an important accelerated time. We need to, get our act together. And sometimes I think there can be a tendency to perhaps even put a lot of pressure on ourselves. But if you can carry that lightness, that playful spirit almost, I think that is actually what is needed more than ever to connect people,
Yes.
to bring them in. That there is this cliche that misery bonds people, but I think so does lightness and joy
Yes.
and play.
Yes.
Yeah.
And humor allows you to step back into that witness self and see the larger meaning or unfolding of what's going on rather than getting mired in it or feeling overwhelmed by it or trying to control it.
Mm. Heather, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. I had a lot of fun, being inspired by questions and just throwing ideas and bouncing ideas off with you. So thank you so much for taking this time to have this conversation with me. And I truly hope that it will inspire all the women who are watching and listening to this.
No, thank you, Irene, and thank you for how you live with such integrity and creativity in following your path and being an example for others with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and that you'll be taking away nourishing gems to create a more joyful and fulfilling life, because that's what it's all about. If you liked what you heard, do give a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and let me know your takeaways and reflections. Till next time, remember to light up the world with your beauty and creativity.